According to Quentin Tarantino, there are two kinds of westerns: the ones that fill time and the ones that make time stop. Some westerns are all dust and no fire. But these are the ones that stayed in his blood, that crept into his scripts, and that defined how he sees storytelling. Here are 12 westerns that Tarantino says are worth your time, and maybe even your soul. We've got shootouts, snowstorms, revenge, and redemption. And if you're a fan of cinema, storytelling, or just Tarantino's mad genius, this list is your new Bible. Let's start with a revenge story that doesn't just flip the script, it reloads it. Raquel Welch plays a woman who watches her husband get murdered, her house torched, and her body violated. Then she straps on a poncho and says, "Not today." Why it's timeless because before Kill Bill, before The Bride, there was Hannie. Tarantino has said this was a huge influence on his female-led vengeance tales, and it's easy to see why. Production insight: Robert Culp plays the bounty hunter who trains her, and this dynamic, you can feel the blueprint for The Bride and Pai Mei right there. Also, Welch did most of her own stunt work, in heels, in the desert. Recognition: it didn't win awards, but its cult following grew like cactus roots in cracked earth. And for QT, that's recognition enough. If Apocalypse Now was a Western, it'd look like this. A gritty, brutal, and deeply uncomfortable film about a U.S. cavalry troop tracking a band of Apache warriors led by Ulzana, a man who fights with myth in his eyes and blood in his hands. Why it's timeless: because it strips away the heroism and leaves the rot. Tarantino loves this film for its realism, and because it never lets you off easy. Production insight, directed by Robert Aldrich, The Dirty Dozen. This movie was considered too violent, too cynical, too un-American for some audiences. But that's exactly what makes it feel honest. QT said the way it handles violence and ambiguity still influences his writing. Recognition: critically acclaimed in Europe, overshadowed in America. But now, a revisionist classic. Subscribe now, folks. We're not even in the top 10 yet, and things are already heating up like a six-shooter in the sun. Snow, silence, and a hero who never speaks. Tarantino adores this film so much, it directly inspired The Hateful Eight. And if you've seen both, you'll get it. A mute gunslinger named Silence faces off against a gang of ruthless bounty hunters in a snowy mountain town. Spoiler alert, it does not end like a typical Western. Why it's timeless: because it dares to be quiet, to be tragic, to make the gunshot feel cold. QT has said it's one of the greatest spaghetti Westerns of all time, period. Production insight, directed by Sergio Corbucci, Tarantino's second favorite Western director after Leone. It was banned in some places for its ending. The American cut tried to slap on a happy finale. Corbucci said, "No way. That bleakness, that's the whole point." Recognition: critics didn't know what to do with it in 1968. But now, it's revered, especially among genre directors and screenwriters. If your boots are still planted and your jaw's still on, hit that subscribe button. This isn't just a list. It's a ride through Tarantino's mind. This one's not your average Western. It doesn't gallop, it drifts, it's slow, hypnotic, like a sunset you don't realize is fading until it's gone. Peter Fonda directs and stars as a cowboy who returns home after years on the trail, but home's not what he remembered. His wife's moved on, his daughter barely knows him, and redemption is something he'll have to earn, one small act at a time. Why it's timeless: because it's not about shooting your way out, it's about walking your way back in. It's tender, melancholic, and soaked in that 70 seconds New Hollywood introspection. Tarantino has praised its visual language and mood, calling it a beautiful poem of a Western. Fonda collaborated with cinematographer Vilmos Sigmund to create the dreamlike double exposures and faded color palette. It looks like a memory, deliberately so. Shot for less than $1 million, it's one of the most visually lyrical Westerns ever made. Awards: it didn't sweep award shows, but it became a cult favorite. Its real victory: inspiring a wave of elegiac Westerns that would follow, from Dead Man to the assassination of Jesse James. Dustin Hoffman plays Jack Crabb, a 121-year-old man looking back on his life. A life that included being raised by Cheyenne warriors, serving as a gunslinger, a scout, a drunk, and a husband many times over. This isn't a Western. It's a wild, funny, brutal retelling of American history from the margins, and Tarantino has often pointed to it as one of the most important revisionist Westerns ever made. Why it's timeless: because it laughs while it bleeds. It's satirical, sharp, and mournful all at once. Tarantino has praised how it unpacks the mythology of the West with wit and heartbreak. Production insight, directed by Arthur Penn right after Bonnie and Clyde, it was one of the first major westerns to show Native Americans with nuance and dignity. And that Custer scene? Still one of the most savage indictments of Manifest Destiny ever filmed. Awards: won Best Actor from the National Board of Review for Hoffman. It didn't win the Oscar race, but it forever changed how we tell frontier stories. Burt Reynolds, in a black wig and barely contained fury, plays a Navajo warrior taking revenge on white outlaws who slaughtered his tribe. It's pulpy, brutal, fast-paced, and Tarantino has said he loves it because it feels like rock and roll. Why it's timeless? Because it's raw. It doesn't slow down to apologize or explain, it just is. It's grindhouse justice in cowboy boots, and it helped shape the tone of Django Unchained more than most people realize. Production insight, directed by Sergio Corbucci, with a bombastic score by Ennio Morricone that punches every scene into overdrive. Reynolds famously hated the wig, the costume, the script. But Tarantino? He loved every frame. Awards none. This one was made for the grindhouse, not the gold statues. And honestly, that's the point. This is the one that started it all. Franco Nero drags a coffin into a mud-soaked town, and inside it, a machine gun. Django isn't just a man, he's a symbol. Tarantino loved it so much he borrowed the name for his own Django Unchained, and even gave Franco Nero a cameo. Why it's timeless? Because it's mythic and messy. Because it plays like a western, painted with blood and ash. And because Django doesn't ride in to save the day, he walks through hell and keeps going. Production insight again, Sergio Corbucci behind the camera. He wanted this to be the anti-John Wayne Western. Dirty, violent, and unrepentantly political. The muddy town was built specifically to look like decay. Awards: it was banned in several countries for violence, but later hailed as one of the most influential spaghetti westerns ever made. Quentin has said it redefined the genre for him. If you're still with us, eyes wide, heart racing, you're our kind of viewer. Subscribe. We're not just building a list, we're honoring a legacy. Here's the final ride through the top 5 westerns as chosen, loved, or shaped by Tarantino himself. One rifle. That's all it takes to build a western this layered. Winchester 73 isn't just about the man who carries the gun, it's about everyone who touches it. A drifter, a coward, a native warrior, a thief. The rifle passes from hand to hand, and with each stop we get another piece of the American West. It's hope, it's hate, it's hunger. Why it's timeless? Because it's not one story, it's many. Tarantino has called it one of the most perfectly structured westerns ever made. It's where character drives plot and objects become myth. Production insight, James Stewart gives one of his darkest performances here, breaking out of the nice guy mold with a simmering vengeance. The script was written in a modular way so that each segment felt like a short story inside a novel. Awards: not a major Oscar film, but universally praised by critics and later added to the National Film Registry. It set the blueprint for the anthology-style narrative Tarantino would echo years later. Corbucci again, this time with a Confederate colonel and his sons dragging a coffin across the desert, filled not with a body, but with stolen cash. It's a film about denial, delusion, and decay. And Tarantino has repeatedly praised it for its daring story and dark spirit. Why it's timeless? Because it strips patriotism down to greed and family down to control. The violence is harsh, the pacing hypnotic, the moral compass long gone. Production insight, Corbucci shot this one in Spain, just like many spaghetti westerns of the time. But what sets it apart is the family dynamic. He called it a Greek tragedy in cowboy boots. Awards: underappreciated on release, but Tarantino has helped bring it back to the spotlight. Especially for fans of The Hateful Eight, it's required viewing. This one's got a special place in Tarantino's heart. Marlon Brando directs and stars in what starts as a tale of revenge and turns into something way stranger and way more beautiful. Brando plays Rio, a bank robber betrayed by his partner. Years later, he returns, not just for payback, but for something deeper. Maybe redemption, maybe just closure. Why it's timeless? Because it doesn't follow the rules. Not of westerns, and not of storytelling. Tarantino called it one of the most emotionally complex westerns ever made. Production insight, Brando clashed with the studio, shot a mountain of footage, and edited the thing himself. It was chaos. But what emerged? A lush lyrical fever dream of betrayal and broken men. Awards none at the time, but now, a cult masterpiece, restored by Scorsese, and constantly mentioned by QT as one of the genre's most misunderstood triumphs. This is the one Tarantino always brings up. His favorite, his holy grail, John Wayne, Dean Martin, Ricky Nelson. A sheriff, a drunk, a kid, and a crippled old man holding a jail against an army of outlaws. And somehow, it sings. Why, it's timeless, because it's about doing the right thing even when you're outnumbered. Because friendship matters. Because tension can be fun. And because it never forgets to entertain. Production insight. Howard Hawks made this in response to High Noon, which he thought was too defeatist. So he gave us a story where the town doesn't abandon the sheriff. His friends step up. Awards none, but its influence everywhere. QT said if he could only bring one film to a desert island, it'd be this one. And here we are, the Alpha, the Omega, the gunshot that echoes across every Tarantino movie, Clint Eastwood, Eli Wallach, Lee Van Cleef, a graveyard, a standoff, a score so iconic you can whistle it in your sleep. Why it's timeless? Because it's not just a Western, it's a dance, a duel, a myth written in dust and dynamite. Tarantino called it the best directed film of all time. That's not casual praise, that's gospel. Sergio Leone directed every frame like a painting. The final cemetery sequence, shot over. 3 days with 5,000 graves dug by Spanish army recruits. Ennio Morricone's score wasn't background music, it was the soul of the movie. No awards, no major Oscars, but who cares? It redefined the genre, and for Tarantino and most of us, it became the North Star for how cinema should feel. And there you have it, 12 westerns that Tarantino doesn't just admire, he carries with him, like bullets in a belt or quotes in a notebook. These aren't just movies, they're blueprints for what cinema can be when it stops caring about rules and starts chasing feeling, raw, strange, unforgettable feeling. Maybe you've seen a few, maybe you haven't. But if you ever find yourself wandering through the film aisle or scrolling past a title with too much silence and too much sky, pause, because if Tarantino thinks it's worth watching, there's probably gold in that dust. Thanks for riding with us, and hey, before the credits roll, subscribe, because the West never ends, it just reloads.